Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's BU Professional Development webinar, Avoiding the Black Hole, the Job Hunter's Guide to Applying Online. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm a member of the Career Programs team here in the Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is sponsored by BU Alumni Relations and is offered to our 326,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing our alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know that we have alumni joining us from many faraway places today. We've got alumni joining us from Dubai, Bulgaria, Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, Poland, Italy, Tarzana, California, Inglewood, Colorado, Urbandale, Iowa, Lake Oswego, Oregon, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Quincy, Hopedale, Lexington, Sherborne, Medfield, Franklin, Newton, and more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your participation in this program and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on our new Zoom online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Zoom support directly. I'm going to give you a number if you want to jot it down. You can contact Zoom support at 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website at bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you may have. You're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A function. If you hover over either the top or the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little icon marked Q&A. Just click on that and then enter your question, and we'll get to those at the end. We have plenty of time to answer those questions. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, College of Arts and Sciences alumnus Scott Singer. During almost 2 decades of in-house corporate HR and staffing firm experience, Scott Singer brought his knowledge, skill, and talents to national and international corporations in a diverse range of industries. As founder and president of Insider Career Strategies, LLC, Scott guides individual and corporate clients at all levels through the job search and hiring process, consulting on everything from resume writing, interview coaching, to developing LinkedIn profiles and helping professionals manage their image. Scott brings unique insight into what employers want and need in terms of talent evaluation, drawing on his time with major corporations such as Motorola, Ryder, Bacardi, Burger King, and LVMH. His straightforward advice and understanding of the other side provides a direct path towards career growth and success, and his work has appeared in Time Out Miami and on recruiter.com. Scott, I think, is somebody that I refer to as a repeat offender. We've asked him to come back every year for, I think, the last 4 years to do a presentation for us. I think that you'll find he's got a kind of a no-nonsense style, but also a really great presentation that he'll do for us. So Scott, thanks so much for being here again. We really appreciate you doing these presentations for our alumni community.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you loud and clear.
Right.
If you want to go ahead and share your slide deck, well, the floor will be all yours.
All right. All right, we got it?
Looks good.
Very good. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you all here at BU. The Alumni Association is great, a lot of great resources. Jeff, pleasure to be with you. Thank you again for the invitation. And as he said, I am a repeat offender. So thank you for joining today's webinar about avoiding the black hole, the Job Hunter's Guide to Applying Online. So first of all, who am I? Who is this guy? So I am, as Jeff said, I'm the president of Insider Career Strategies. I'm a certified professional resume writer, a certified professional career coach, and a talent acquisition consultant. So I do work with several companies as well, doing talent acquisition as well as presentations and development. So my background, yes, I am an alumnus of BU back in '93, although in those days it wasn't CAS, it was CLA. They seem to change the names on these every time that they get the opportunity. And I got my MBA from University of Michigan, Dearborn. And as he had mentioned, I am a former corporate recruiter. So I had worked at Bacardi, Motorola, LVMH, Ryder. I've worked with some big companies. You know, I think this leads very well into the next slide here, which is, let's talk about applying online today. I'm sure that absolutely everybody here who has been on the call, that is on the call, has applied to a job and realized that, holy cow, applying to jobs is a black hole. And, you know, this is a visualization. You can see here all the resumes going into the, you know, the data superhighway. You apply online. They ended up in a dumpster with My Left Sock, Jimmy Hoffa, and DB Cooper. You know, this is the perception. It's not 100% accuracy, but I absolutely understand this is how it feels. And, you know, sometimes the perception is the reality. So let's talk about, let's see here. Okay, so let's talk about the job search today and the reality behind it. So why is it so complicated? Well, first and foremost, you need to think about the numbers. There are between 250 and 10,000 applicants that apply to each open position. So, you know, the odds there are definitely not in your favor. And it's very systems driven. And what I mean by that is that there is really no, you know, there's very minimal opportunity to hit people directly. So what you end up with is you end up with, you know, if a company's got 10,000 open positions and they've got 10,000 people per job, I mean, you can very easily do the math. They, you know, so they have to rely on systems to do this. And it's very specific information that these systems are using, and there's a lot of data between your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and all the other data that you're putting out there. And for all the other candidates, there's a ton of information there. So the truth is that employers do hide behind the technology. It's just the fact of the matter. They don't have the bandwidth and the capacity to talk to everybody, so they hide there. And if you'd like to see a good resource, and by the way, Jeff, I'll be happy to share the profile, the presentation afterwards with anybody that's interested, although I know you will be posting this as well. But, you know, there was an article in ERE Media about why it's so difficult. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what is an applicant tracking system? I'm going to also refer to it as an ATS. This is the HR department's window into the recruiting world. So what I mean by that is that the companies are using this. This is the database that they are collecting all the resumes. So it's where the company recruiters store their job descriptions. It's where they approve and process new jobs. Often what will happen is they don't even need to send an email. Often what will happen is that a hiring manager will copy and paste the job description they're looking for. The HR person will click approve and it'll go through the approval process. It also is the platform where companies will post opportunities to the different job boards, such as Monster, Career Builder, and LinkedIn, as well as their own corporate website. And, you know, most obviously, it's where they collect and store every received resume. They've got to stay somewhere, so they all end up in this database. So let's talk about what happens after you click apply for a job. So very first thing is that the ATS collects resumes from every single source that's out there. So I really mean every source. So if you apply to an external job board, often it'll directly connect to that. Corporate websites. So if you go on to Boston University's corporate website where they're looking to do their hiring, it all goes into this ATS. Internal postings. Larger organizations will often post in an internal platform. They say, hey, we have a job as a marketing manager. They want to give internal people the opportunity to apply. So often they'll go into the same place. Referrals. Let's say your cousin Larry works at company X and you give Larry your resume. Larry is probably going to go ahead and email it into their referral database, and it all goes into the same place. So this is where it gets a little bit theoretical. So after you click apply, you've sent your resume, it's gotten into their database, you're typically going to apply against a specific job. Not necessarily, but typically. So what happens is that the first thing is that basically the applicant tracking system compares the job description to each resume. All right, so it's going to be a one-to-one relationship, and it's going to essentially give each resume a score based against the job. So what it's going to do is it's going to look at the words in the job description, it's going to look at the words in the resume, and it's going to look at the text. You know, do you have a certain keyword in there? And what I mean by that is, let's say the job description requires Salesforce.com and you have experience in Salesforce.com. It's going to look to make sure that it's got that exact match. Also, it's going to look for phrase similarities. And what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. if you're an accountant or a finance professional and you are doing month-end closing, you are closing the books, it's the same word as somebody who's closing a real estate transaction. Maybe you're selling a property or buying a property, but it's a different context. So it's going to look at that phrase similarity and see what it has to do in terms of the context. Also, what's going to happen is it's going to look at clean formatting. And we'll get into some more detail about this, but ATSs really like cleanly formatted resumes. There's a lot of different tools out there where you can provide and build some very nice, very attractive resumes, you know, graphically designed in multiple columns. They're great and they're wonderful for professional presentation. Unfortunately, if you upload one of these to an applicant tracking system, it could cause some problems and it may get kicked out because of the way that it works. So this is another key point. Applicant tracking systems also like a single column format. In the old days, it used to be on the left, you would have a header, summary of experience, and then on the right, you would detail the experiences that you had. Applicant tracking systems suck the information out. They want to see it in a progressive order. So typically now they want to see it in a single column format. And this is another important thing. The ATSs really prefer Microsoft Word. Now, here's the thing. There are a lot of different word processing suites out there. There's Pages and Apple. There's also the Google suite. There's a lot of older platforms and you know, common license type things. But here's the issue, is each one works a little bit differently, and each one does formatting differently, and even a PDF versus a Word might come across as different. So when given the opportunity, you want to apply using a Word format. It'll keep the formatting. And the reason for this is a good 80% of the companies use Microsoft Word as their word processing software. So that's more of the common language, and that's going to work in your favor. All right, so let's talk next about how recruiters use the ATS to review the applicants. So here I am, I'm a recruiter, and I look through and I get, oh my God, I've got 10,000 different resumes. And I think to myself, I am not going to be able to view through all of these. So let's talk about how I'm going to approach it. So first, they go into the ATS and then they review and they select their candidates. But let's talk about how that process works. So what's going to happen, I mentioned that it is going to give the resumes a score. So let's say that Fred, based on the keyword matches and word phrases, gets a 100% match. Julia, based on the keywords and phrases, gets a 70% match. Donna gets a 90% match. And resumes are going to be sorted by the strongest one first. They're going to start with the 100% match and work their way down. Now, the internal candidates may or may not receive a deeper look. So let's say you're in a Fortune 500 company. You've got hundreds and thousands of employees. Some company policies mandate that the internal employees get the same level of consideration, where, you know, as the externals, or more consideration. Some may not, but often what will happen is if you're an internal candidate, the recruiter may go and look at all of those. So this is where it gets a little bit funky, all right? The recruiter, when they're going through the system, is going to stop after they've gathered enough qualified candidates to call and screen. A recruiter is not going to print up 10,000 resumes and hand them to a hiring manager. They're just not. It's not. That's not the purpose that the recruiter plays, and it's not the purpose that the hiring manager plays. The recruiter is searching as that first level of review. So what they're going to do is they're going to look for 5 to 10 resumes, see which ones are the best possible matches, and then screen those. And, you know, here's the thing. I mean, the recruiter might be looking through 100, 200 resumes to get to that 5 to 10. So if they are going through that and they look through 100 and there's 10,000 resumes, that means that they are looking at 1% of the resumes. So the odds are not in your favor. It's just factual. So the bottom line is that in this case, you need to have a strong resume if you're interested in making the cut. And, you know, a lot of people do not necessarily put the time and the effort into building a good resume. A lot of them will just basically slap together some job descriptions. They won't spend a lot of time looking at what's the content in there, the formatting, make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, make sure it's well structured. And, you know, the other truth of the matter is there's not a lot of structured education around how this all works. So, you know, my advice to you is certainly look into the best practices of having, you know, of building a good resume. It's certainly going to, you know, help you make the cut. So you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not fair. Why do recruiters do it that way? And let's go through the reasons. First, it's a matter of time. And if you're talking about 10,000 candidates per job and they're working on 30 open jobs, that's 300,000 resumes. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They don't have the time. And, you know, just like everybody else in an organization, people have competing demands. Recruiters may be in meetings. They have to meet with their hiring managers. They have to do the actual interviews and the phone screens. They have to fill out reports. There's a variety of different responsibilities that they have, and just getting to that's going to be very difficult. So you're looking at the number of open positions that you're dealing with. You're looking at the volume of resumes received. And here's another thing, grumpy hiring managers. If you're a hiring manager and you have an open job, you are not going to be happy. And the reason for that is that you have work that needs to be done. And it means that either you are doing the work yourself or you are spreading it out among a bunch of people on your team who are a little displeased at the fact that they're doing everybody else's work, or the work just may simply not get done. So you've got a grumpy hiring manager who, and I had this when I was in a recruiting role, where the hiring manager would walk over to my desk, stand over and say, who do you have for me? I need to take a look at some resumes. So in that case, guess what? You drop what you're doing, go in, pull a stack of resumes and give them to the hiring manager, but you want to make sure that they're reasonably a good fit for the open role. So, you know, often it's a case of the squeaky wheel getting the oil. And, you know, this is one of those cases, spot on. So they really do need to rely on technology to help prioritize. I recognize that the algorithms of these systems are not perfect. They're certainly not going to necessarily be 100% match, but here's the thing is, you know, it's the best you've got. And if you're dealing with a large stack of resumes, they need the ability to do that. And I want to give everyone an example to think about here. So think about how deep you go in your own Google searches when you are looking something up. So here's an example. Let's say you're in Boston and you put in Italian restaurant near me, and tons of great Italian restaurants in the Boston area. Well, here you are, you put that in and you get 50 pages of search results on Google. Jeff, I'm sure you've done this. How many pages do you filter through before you select a resume, before you select a restaurant to go to?
I barely ever see page 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And it's one of those things you need to really prioritize your search. If you find something you like in the first page, hey, great, there's a fantastic Italian restaurant over there in the North End. I'm going to go to that. That's your effort. So it works the same in this. I mean, if you know, look, you may have the best background possible. You may have the most wonderful resume, but if you are showing up on page 50 and they're just going to go through page 1 or 2, it's not going to work in your favor. So let's get into then the nitty gritty of what you can do to get out of the black hole. All right. And so let's talk about some of the specifics here. Keep in mind, I do need to frame this, that job hunting is a combination of art and science. It's really a combination of the both. It's not going to be one step, gets to the next one and resolves it. And I'm sorry, you know, I typically, you know, of all the clients I've worked with, I've coached hundreds of clients. The ones that typically have the most problems with this are the engineering folks. You know, they tend to like things in a very, you know, straightforward order. And, you know, unfortunately, it's just not something that lends itself to that. But there are steps that you can take to really help push yourself forward in this regard. So let's start with that. So first and foremost, you do want to start with a strong resume. This is your tool, okay? I want you to think of an analogy. Your LinkedIn profile is your billboard, your resume is your marketing brochure, and your interview is your advertising pitch, okay? People buy based on a brochure or a billboard. So you want to make sure that you've got something very strong that captures a lot of attention. And I would suggest there are a lot of fantastic books there on LinkedIn that you can look at. I'm sorry, on Amazon that you can download or purchase on how to build a really strong resume. Very important. You want to make sure that you're compliant with the best practices, that you're using the single column format, that you've got a lot of bullets that use a lot of the descriptions of your work as well as the accomplishments you've brought. Have a keyword section. And you can find a lot of really good samples that show you details of what a good resume looks like. Analyze the job description. This matters, and you want to really take some time. Look at the job you're applying, because this is your roadmap. This is how you're going to develop a strategy to go ahead and to get noticed. So, that leads us in for next step. Make sure you're a decent fit for this job. You may think that you are ready for a chief marketing officer job, but you're a marketing analyst and you've had 1 year of experience. Maybe you're not the right fit. Maybe you're looking to make a transition into HR and you've been an accountant. Maybe you don't have the right background for that, but you need to make a transition to that. Maybe you are applying for a job in sales and technology, but you've worked in consumer products. Maybe you don't necessarily understand the technology that people are dealing with. So, take a moment, make sure you're a decent fit, because the truth of the matter is that the better fit you are for a job, the more it's going to work in your favor. Now, I want to frame this, okay? If there's a job that's a little bit of a reach and you're aspirational, absolutely apply. You're not going to get the job if you don't apply, but the better fit you are, the more it's going to work in your favor. So next thing, make sure the resume is applicant tracking system friendly. So let's go through the steps on this. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft Word format. Common lingua, it's the lingua franca for applicant tracking systems. Standard fonts. Now, there are a lot of gorgeous fonts out there, tons of them, but there's, I have a confession, which is I usually do my resumes in one of two fonts. It's either done in Cambria or Calibri. You can also use Helvetica, Times New Roman, but these are the common fonts that most people are using when they're doing their work in their resume, in their common word processing programs. The applicant tracking systems don't necessarily load every single font that's in there. It just doesn't make sense. And the other thing is also be smart about it. If you're using an obscure font, maybe you're a graphic designer and you design the font yourself, don't use that because no one else is going to have it and it's going to ruin the formatting of your resume. Also, pay attention to the message you're sending. Don't use a comic book font when you're applying for a professional job. Now, if you're applying for a comic book artist, maybe that's a separate deal, but it's also something that you need to think about how it looks visually. Single column format, it's easy for the applicant tracking system to parse out the data, put it in there, and it's going to save you a lot of work from filling out extra fields. Or it might just, if you don't have the data there and it doesn't get sucked in, they might just skip you altogether. And this is a big thing. Avoid graphics and text boxes. Now, there are a lot of really cool resume writers out there, and I've seen some people do some really amazing stuff where they've put in, graphs and charts and really interesting artwork into the resume. But here's the problem. If you've got that data in the graphics and it's not also in a text format somewhere in the resume, it's not going to get absorbed. The applicant tracking system is only looking at the textual information, and it may also ruin the formatting. Text boxes also. A text box won't typically capture in the ATS. It's considered a separate element, and it'll show up out of place. So if you're formatting your resume, I certainly advise you to make sure to get to know Microsoft Word, know it well, because there is a lot of formatting that you can do in the system without having to resort to graphics or text boxes. Tables, use them sparingly. When I say sparingly, I mean maybe use it for one line where you've got two cells, and the table, same thing. It's about how the system reads it. Does it, what's the flow that it follows when it sucks the information out of your resume? All right, so Next thing, tweak your resume to the job description. Let's talk about this. I have seen people spend half an hour working on adapting their resume to a job. Don't do that. Okay, this is what you want to do. Save a copy of your resume to your desktop to edit it. Save it to that specific version. You're applying to a job at Boston University, call it Scott Singer Resume Boston University. And then modify it for your target job. What you want to do is you should have a skills and competency section. Change that. Make sure that if they've got a specific database that they require and you've got that experience, then go ahead and put that in. If you have certain experiences in, let's say that they're looking for Salesforce, maybe you haven't taken Salesforce, you haven't used it. There's a lot of online training, great opportunity for you to go online, take a quick class on LinkedIn Learning and, to add that into your resume. Also change the title. Often what you'll have is, your targeted job. You want to make sure that, if you're targeting a job as an accountant, change the title on your resume. Have a header that says accountant. And after 5 minutes, stop. And I really mean that. 5 minutes, don't spend any more time adapting your resume. And here's why. You are never going to be able to guess all of the algorithms that the applicant tracking system is using. There is a variety of different word flows, a variety of different engines, and you aren't going to be able to grasp all of the way that it's going to read the resume. So after 5 minutes, use your best guess and stop. And then upload your resume and apply. Make sure that you send the version that's adapted. Again, it's not going to be totally customized, but you want something that's going to be a little bit tweaked. The other thing to keep in mind too is that if the recruiter does stop on it and it shows that it looks like it's aligned to the job, then they're going to give it a little more consideration if you make it through that filter. Then here's the next piece. Go around the system. All right. Get LinkedIn Premium. And actually, I'm going to elaborate a little bit beyond this, but basically, here's the thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an amazing tool, and it has absolutely changed the way people network. You are able to make one-to-one connections with a lot of people who are influencers and decision makers. So if you've got a premium subscription, what it's going to do is it's going to give you additional search capabilities. It's going to give you additional contact capabilities. And here's the other beautiful thing is recruiters are paying about $10,000 a seat to be able to comb through the LinkedIn system to find passive talent, namely you. And if you do have a premium subscription, it actually bubbles you up a little bit higher in their search results. There is an element of pay for play in there. So if you have the premium subscription, you're going to be able to search LinkedIn and identify the likely hiring manager. Notice I didn't say the recruiter. The recruiter is the first gate line. They are the person that's going to be going through and doing the initial sort. But the hiring manager is the one with the pain point. And use your best judgment. You aren't necessarily going to be able to 100% certainty guess who it is. Smaller companies, it's going to be easier. If you're applying for a job as an accountant, you look up the controller. You look up for a job as a marketing manager, you look for the director of marketing. You're looking for a VP of analytics, look for the SVP of analytics. Try to go a level up, see who the hiring manager is. Remember, you are the solution to their problem. They've got a pain point. You can be the solution to that. So then what you do is you send the hiring manager an email through LinkedIn. And it doesn't need to be long. Think about your cell phone, okay? Short, sweet, the size of this. Basically what would appear, maybe the hiring manager is standing in line at Chipotle and they're ordering the burrito and they're thinking, oh my God, I've got to rush back to the office. I've got so much work to do. You send them a brief note. Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Scott Singer. I have applied online. Always apply online first because otherwise it's easy for them to dismiss you and to say, oh, we only look at people who apply through our ATS. And then say, I've got X years of experience doing the responsibilities in this job. I would love to talk to you and I can be reached at email and phone number. Short and sweet. And remember, you are the solution to their problem. Now, the other thing I want to mention, two things actually, is I've had hiring managers based on this when I was recruiting, walk over to my desk, show me their message on their cell phone and say, hey, can you pull this person's resume for me? I see they've applied. I'd like to see what they're about. you'll capture their attention. You know, again, you are the solution to their problem. The other thing is that I do want to mention that, you know, a lot of companies are investing their recruiting dollars in LinkedIn. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is really completely filled out. You may never even get to the point. They may be working on a search where the job isn't even advertised, and the mechanism that they're trying to use is LinkedIn to reach out to passive candidates. So if you have a LinkedIn that's fully filled out and it's got all of your data and a lot of your keywords and your workflows and your job description, and you set off the dog whistle, there's an area where you can say to recruiters you're interested in opportunities, you may get additional consideration through there. It absolutely cannot hurt your case. So let me talk about a few final thoughts on this. Remember, you can change the playing field here. Okay, companies set up a lot of obstacles, but there's no reason that you necessarily need to follow their process. I am not suggesting that you go and show up at their door with a bouquet of roses for the hiring manager and try to make a great impression. You know, go on the spot and ask for an interview. I'm not suggesting that, but you can tweak the system a little bit by networking, either directly or through other people to try to get attention on a certain job. And working harder to get noticed really can pay dividends. A lot of times, if you're going ahead and you're putting in the additional effort and, you know, you're essentially saying, hey, look at me, here I am. And, you know, sometimes the people who are the loudest are the ones that get the most attention. Don't worry about networking hard. Worry about networking effectively. And what I mean by that is, in the old days, and I know some people still do it, there's a lot of it, you know, people going to trade shows and, you know, the weekly SHRM meeting, the monthly SHRM meeting, or your, you know, Association of CPA meeting, and going and, you know, networking. And that's fine. I would still encourage you to do that. Keep that as a part of your portfolio of communication. But here's the thing. A lot of the communication these days is one-to-one. So now, if you know, with LinkedIn, the rules have changed. If you can be strategic about reaching out to one or two key decision makers at a company, or leveraging a contact that you have in a company to make that connection, it's absolutely got the potential to pay dividends for you. And as I said before, you may be the solution to a hiring manager's problems. Don't be shy. Don't be modest. This is really one of those situations where you really need to think about yourself as the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, have a little bit of an ego about this. This is not the time to be modest. You need to present yourself in such a way that, you know, that you are the right solution at the right time. And, you know, last but not least, your time matters too. And it's really an important message. Be smart about the jobs to which you apply. Don't apply to jobs that you're not interested in. Don't apply to jobs that you're clearly not a fit. Don't apply to jobs that, you know, let me be frank, there are some crappy companies out there as well. Don't apply to jobs if they've got a bad reputation and you really don't want to work there anyway. So, you know, be strategic about it. The one thing I will tell you is that a targeted application is got a much better chance of being successful than applying to a bunch of jobs at a company that you may or may not be qualified for. The more jobs you apply to at an organization can diminish your brand, because an employer might think that you're not serious about the job and you're not sure what you want to do. So then, last thing but not least, employers do keep resumes on file. You may have a certain unique skill set or a talent that will pay dividends in the future. Maybe you've used a piece of software that they use. Maybe a hiring manager has made a hiring decision. The person comes in and within a week, it's obvious that the person they hired is not a good fit. So then they want to go quietly back through the resumes and see who else has applied. Just remember, your resume does have a pretty long shelf life. So you may get some second life out of your application in the future by going ahead and applying and understanding that you may get a contact in the future even when you're not expecting it. So that concludes the direct portion of the presentation. Jeff, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm sure we have some questions at this point.
Scott, we have some great questions that have come in. I'm already wondering if we're going to be able to get to all of them, but thank you for those of you who've chimed in with your questions. Again, you can ask Scott a question now using the Q&A feature. While we give it a chance for a couple more to roll in, Scott, I do want to say you're the first person I've actually come across who has a good reason why somebody might think about investing in LinkedIn Premium. I also want to make sure that our guests know you're not a hired LinkedIn spokesperson in any way.
Nope. Nope. And I pay
So,
my $600 a year for my premium subscription like everybody else.
yeah. Do you know, can you opt in for like a month to try that out for size, or do you have to buy the whole year? I actually
No,
don't.
you can absolutely do a
Yeah.
month-to-month
Okay.
subscription, and often they will actually give you a month for free.
Hmm. Couple more things I want to say about Scott as it relates to LinkedIn. We are lucky that Scott is an active contributor to our Boston University alumni LinkedIn group. So I encourage you to follow up and read some of the other things that Scott has shared there, all related to this topic. And then also I want to mention before we get into questions, Scott, as we'd said, you've done a bunch of other webinars for us, and folks can find those now. You talk a lot about LinkedIn and networking, and you've done another webinar for us specifically about designing a resume for those of you out there who might be older employees, 50 and over. Scott did a great session for us about sort of preventing age discrimination by keeping your resume current. So I definitely want to encourage everybody to check those out. Okay, getting to the questions. Some of you have asked things that I think start to veer into territory that could be an entire another webinar. So we're not going to get to all of these questions today, but let's get started. Frank is wondering, as it relates to job descriptions, does HR or a recruiter or the hiring company intentionally keep out words from a job description, but look for them in resumes to find a better fit? It doesn't sound like that's what you're saying. That's how the ATSs work.
It's an interesting question, and I've never seen that in practice. I don't know how that would benefit. The more information that a hiring manager can put in, the better the match they can get. But also, a large part of it is communication directly with HR in terms of what they want. What I have seen perpetually is lazy job description writers, people that don't take the time to really put in what's in there, what they really need. And then when it comes into the job, into the interview, or they go through resumes, they say, well, this person doesn't have skill A, B, or C. So I've seen that plenty of times. I think it's just more of a habit of omission versus intentionality.
And on that topic, Rachel is wondering, are ATS keywords drawn automatically from the job description, or does a recruiter enter them manually?
Great question. The job description is the one that so most of the time, actually there's two separate channels here. Let me address both of those. If they are looking at who's applied against a certain job description, like they're saying, okay, for this accountant job, I want to see everybody who's applied. Typically what they will do is go, by the scores that are assigned by the ATS based on the job description. However, if it does need sharpening, they'll add a keyword or two to really whittle down the population. Now, the flip side to that is, let's say it's a passive search and they don't have a job description open, then it's 100% recruiter entered keyword driven. So in that case, then they can go in and, do the keyword searches.
A lot of you are asking LinkedIn specific questions, and I know Scott's going to share his email when we're done here. I think because LinkedIn isn't exactly what we're talking about, it's this is really focused on the applicant tracking systems. We're going to stick to questions about those, but I encourage all of you to follow up with Scott for questions about LinkedIn. Okay. Haley is suggesting that she heard a good way to check how your resume would be viewed by an ATS is to download your own resume as a text file. Have you heard that before? Do you have any experience with that?
Sometimes if you are having issues with how your resume will upload, like I've seen it sometimes where even a Word version, people have issues with it. If you do save it as a text version, sometimes that can smooth out the issues in terms of how it is uploaded. But here's the thing, if you've got nice formatting in the Word document, you may lose some of that. So, often you have the opportunity to copy and paste as well as to upload a version. If you have if you're having issues, you can do both of those. Copy and paste the text in as a text file and then use that. Now, One other thing, that wasn't where the question I thought they were going. There was another question, which was, there's a lot of engines out there that people say, hey, test how, good your resume is ATS friendly. Keep in mind, all of those services are selling something. They're usually looking to make a sale on, resume services or, application services. So take those with a grain of salt. I've also seen somebody plug into, word cloud applications, their resume. That doesn't exactly work because it's not about frequency in terms of the number of words that you have. It's more of, what's the order and where does it matter in the word flows. So, but yes, sorry, to circle back. Yes, text file can definitely help.
Got a lot of folks asking questions about cover letters, and I think in some ways that also could be another webinar. But could you say a few words about cover letters and the ATS online applications? Or, are you seeing, I think I'm seeing this, that the cover letter, I think, is becoming less important.
It is. It is. So let's talk, first of all, there was a letter here from Dylan. Does a cover letter influence your score at all in the ATS? And the answer is no. It doesn't. It's a separate document. It's an additional document, and it doesn't get plugged into the ATS. At least in the score. Now, where do cover letters matter? So let's talk about this. Some companies, like for example, if they're hiring straight out from an MBA program, they want people to send in, cover letter because they want to see who they're about. College graduates often get a different type of treatment. If you've got a referral to your cousin Louie over at company X, you don't want to do a cold introduction. You want to send them a cover letter saying, here's why I've sent this. But the truth of the matter is, I'm going to go back to the comment I made before. Think about this. If you're sending a communication to somebody, let's say you've got an email address, nobody's going to read through a full cover letter if you're sending them an email out of the blue. Mostly what you're going to do is you want to send something short and sweet. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm applying to. I've applied online. Love to talk to you. So, look, you should have a cover letter ready. You never know when it's going to be important. One of the things I have seen people use a cover letter for to really impress is at job fairs. If you're going to a career fair, for example, and they say, hey, Embry-Riddle, the Embry-Riddle College Fair, and we've got Motorola here, and we've got General Electric here, and you go to meet the recruiters and you've got a prepared general cover letter. Yeah, that's that little extra touch that makes a difference. But 90% of the time, you're not going to really use a cover letter.
A bunch of questions related to kind of the creativity of the resume. I actually find these ATSs offensive, Scott, because my resume looks awesome. And in a lot of ways, we've been all trained that your resume is part of your personal brand. We all talk about personal brand being the super important thing during a job search. What advice do you have folks that are applying for creative jobs, graphic design, some other, fields where it's more, your brand is a little bit more important, and what the ATS is doing is making you have a resume that looks exactly like everybody else's?
Yeah, actually, I had a client just last week who's a graphic designer and art director. Gorgeous resume. And the problem is that his resume just won't go into the ATS. And what we worked out was, and I've told other graphics folks this as well, creatives, basically you need two versions of the resume. Okay, same content, but you want to have one that's ATS friendly that you can upload all the data into, and then you want a graphically designed version that you can upload as an additional file. So, save that as a PDF, save that as a JPEG, but something that you can also save so that people can see their acumen. Because it's true, if an art director is hiring graphic designers, they want to see what kind of work you do. And they, if it's a graphic designer, they're going to judge you based on the resume. So having both of those versions is going to be important. Always upload with the boring but very powerful, straightforward resume, and then have ready to hand out or to upload, as a picture, your graphically designed version as well.
Question from Jay. Have you heard of applicant tracking systems having some sort of screening device where they're actually weeding out people who maybe have too many years of experience? Again, talking about age discrimination. Is that a real fear?
Yeah, it is a real fear. And I hate to say it, but age discrimination is very real, especially as hiring managers get younger and we get older. I've got a lot more gray hair than I did 3 years ago when I started doing this. We all do. We all have less hair. We have, grayer hair. We get older, and there's younger people making decisions. So this is actually a very complex topic, and you'll be able to find on my LinkedIn page the presentation I did with you, Jeff, actually 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. So let me kind of dive into this. There's multiple aspects of this I'd like to address very quickly. Number one, when a company is asking you for your date of birth on the ATS, so that you know it's not so they can judge you for your age, what they're doing is they're using that for their compliance reporting, and to go into, they may actually be able to run a background check straight from the system if you're the candidate of choice, and having that data in there. So it should be sequestered in such a way that the recruiter won't see that. That being said, you need to think about your age when you're putting together a resume. And yes, a recruiter can go and look for 7 to 10 years of experience, 5 to 10 years of experience. And if you've got too many years of experience listed, that could cause problems. So there are things you can do. Number one, cut off your older job experience. It just doesn't matter quite as much. Focus on the stuff you've done for the last 10, 12 years. Don't really focus on the work you did before that, unless it's abundantly relevant to what you're doing now. Take out your college graduation date. If you're out of college for more than 3 to 5 years, you don't need your college graduation date on there. There's no reason for it. People just want to see that you graduated. But yes, age discrimination is a very real thing. And a lot of these systems may not necessarily be intentional in terms of the discrimination, but there may be systemic ways in terms of the way, as Jay put it, the filtering works, that it may work against you. So, you want to definitely be mindful of that. I do encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, to view my other presentation.
Kind of a nuts and bolts question about resumes as it relates to the ATS. Is the objective portion of a resume still something that you advise clients to have? Is it a waste of space?
Yeah, it's different. It's a little different than what it was, but yes, you should have something that sets the tone for your resume. Typically what I do for clients, or I advise clients to do, is have the title, where you've got front and center right below your name and address and your email. What's the job that you're targeting? If you're applying for a job that's an accountant, make sure it says accountant right there. It sets the frame, it's a match point, and when the recruiter's viewing it, it sets the expectations. And, in terms of the objective, don't necessarily say seeking exciting opportunity in accounting where I can leverage my experience, People aren't concerned with that anymore. What they want to see is a quick hit, 1 to 5 lines of what are some of your biggest wins and how they relate. Experience managing the entire accounting closing cycle, strong financial analysis acumen, basically something short and sweet that can help set the stage and tell people that, that you've got the right orientation and skill set.
Curtis, I'm going to kind of rephrase your question a little bit here. Scott, this is about sort of very specific skills. I'm guessing Curtis is in a tech field or programming, something along those lines, where I guess the question that we'll restate it is, if a job description is looking for very specific experience with software packages, that sort of thing, do you always want to make sure that those are all listed out on your resume in terms of all the software that you're familiar with or have skills in?
Yeah. So here's the thing. All right. If you don't list it and it's a requirement that they have, you're not going to get selected. Okay. It's just essential that you put that. For the most part, don't put an explanation. Just say, if you've got SQL, put SQL in there. Unless you are clearly a beginner in it, and that's okay. You can put SQL in parentheses, beginner. But here's the thing. If you want to be in the game, you've got to have the right keywords. So I would include that in there. Keep in mind, a lot of this really takes place during the screening. The way the process usually works is that the recruiter will pick up the phone and they'll call you, Curtis, and they'll say, hey, tell me about yourself. I see you have listed SQL. Tell me about your depth of experience in SQL. And everybody's got different depths of experience and different orientation, a variety of different things. So leave that to the screening portion. The only thing I would say is, if it's not intellectually honest, if you haven't really touched it, if you haven't gone through training on it, don't include it.
Curtis, if you feel like I kind of really got away from the essence of what your question was, please let me know and we'll re-ask it again. Interesting question from Robert. How do you know when a job posting is too old to even be worth applying to? Do you feel like there's an expiration date on job postings?
Sometimes. So job job posting. So there's basically many reasons that a job can be out there for a while. By the way, let me just frame this. Companies are really lousy at making hiring decisions. They take forever to do it. They talk to an infinite number of candidates, and they're still acting like it's 2009 in the height of the recession. So, the jobs can stay open for a long period of time. They're not necessarily going to close it if the interview process is going. Usually they'll close it if they've got an offer. My recommendation is, you don't apply, you lose. You've got the opportunity to go ahead and apply. You go ahead and you've got to, submit. Now, that being said, try to ask yourself, is there a reason why this job has been open forever? Maybe it's what's called an evergreen job. Maybe it's the kind of thing they're always recruiting for. Like some companies, like the financial houses, maybe they're always looking for a financial analyst, Maybe that's the case. If it's a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley, guess what? They're going to be hiring tons of those people. So, you've got to use some judgment, but I would personally err on the side of, if the job looks like a good fit, apply and then try to find who is the decision maker and see if you can make an impact that way.
Jeanette's asked an interesting question. So when you apply online, oftentimes the online application form requires you to fill out some fields first and then upload your resume. Scott, is the uploaded version of the resume the things that is getting screened, or is it more important what you put in those fields, where they almost make you duplicate what's already on your resume and that actual sort of online application process?
Yeah, there's an initial screening part, and sometimes what happens is, I remember I years ago used to work in what was called Brass Ring Connexa. It's one of the big ATSs, and they used to give a sequestering feature. Basically, they would categorize everybody that fit all of the questions that they answered correctly into one bucket, and all the people that didn't answer them correctly into the other bucket. So, look, you've got to do your best. Answer them. You may not necessarily get considered, if your answer doesn't match there. But here's the thing. You've got to be intellectually honest. Whatever you put in there needs to be verifiable. And if they come back to you and they ask you and they say, well, you said this, and you answer, well, I really don't. I just put that to get through, then you're going to come across as dishonest and you'll never work at that company.
Gong or Gang has asked, is a 4-page resume too long for an applicant tracking system to read? Now, Gong, I think a 4-page resume is definitely a whole other webinar topic, but is there a specific length that is too long for most of those, Scott?
Okay, so for the ATS, no. All right, for the human being readers, yes.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say. All right, Gong, I don't know about your background or your technical background, but if you're a business professional, 1 to 2 pages is ideal. 2 pages, don't be afraid to go to 2 pages if you've got more than 2 to 3 years of work experience. If you are a technologist, you do get a little more leeway. Like a lot of IT people can get away with 3 pages. I've seen some people go to 4, although I try to whittle that down quite a bit. Keep in mind your resume is really, it's your brochure. It's not intended to be a long document. It's something to get attention. But if you're a technologist, or here's another aspect of this, maybe it's a CV. If you're going into academia, like for example, Jeff, if you guys are hiring a professor, guess what? A 4-page document that's listing all of the publications and everything else that they've done, the research, the symposiums, they're going to look for that. They want to see that there's the appropriate credentials for that. So, but if you're going for a business environment, try to stay to 2 pages.
I think this is, well, okay. So we've got a couple folks who have asked about the salary expectations component of applying online. I guess that's somewhat related to the ATS, but certainly there are some online applications that require you to fill out that field. Do you want to quickly talk about how you encourage people to complete that field?
Yeah. So the salary expectations are one of those things that they use as one of, we were talking about the initial screen. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So here's my recommendation. Number 1, if you have the opportunity to leave it blank, leave it blank. A lot of times they're not going to give you that option. Next, if they allow an alphanumeric answer, meaning you can put words in there, put negotiable. We're all negotiable. All right. And keep in mind that salary is, the worst thing about being asked for a salary is there's so much more to compensation than just your salary. How good are your benefits? How much is your copay? What do there's so many different pieces to this. So, if you got the ability to put a word in there, put negotiable. If you have the ability to put 0, if they require a number, do that. Those are really my recommendations. You want to make sure that it's less and less about the number and more about what your qualifications are for the job. Salary should follow the conversation, not lead it.
You've all asked really fantastic questions that I think kind of get away from the task at hand here today. Scott, we've got folks asking about diminishing their brand, transitioning to another industry. You talked a little bit about how to reach contacts on LinkedIn that you're not already connected to. A lot of questions about applying on LinkedIn versus the company website, how to explain employment gaps.
Let me go through. Let me just I see a few of these I can quick hit. And
yeah,
kind of
go for it. Go for it.
All right. So Johanna asked, and I apologize if I mangle any of your names. At some job search workshops run by career coaches and so forth, they'd said that many of the posted jobs do not exist. Is this true in some cases? And if so, why? The answer, 99% of the chance, no. Companies post a job for real because it's a real job. They need it, and it costs money to post a job. They are, they're posting on Monster, Career Builder. It costs them every time they do that. The only exception that I can see to that is if a company is sponsoring somebody for an H-1B visa or some sort of other visa, they may need to post the job to see if there's other qualified applicants. And if they come across, they may need to consider them. Let's see. One time I Linnea Curtis asked if I have a resume designed in InDesign. Do you know if that will translate into the ATS? Probably not. Sorry. It's one of those things, again, it's a layout program, not necessarily the right way. Can you share any additional tips to try to identify the hiring manager on LinkedIn for large companies? Number one, zero in on geography. If the job is located in Chicago and you're in Chicago, try to find somebody who's located in that office. Again, try to go a level or two up or see if there's somebody that you can find there, but that's really the best recommendation I can give. What's an appropriate way to address work gaps on resumes? It's kind of outside the topic, but straightforward. If you have something good to account for it, fill it in. If you were a full-time parent during that period of time, indicate that you were a full-time parent and caretaker during that time. Don't elaborate, don't put that in. Also, one other thing is use years, don't use months if you've got more than 2 years of experience. All right, so let's see. What's the best way to explain 1+ years of an employment gap? We talked about that. Is there a way when you can find out? All right. Is there a way to find out when a job is posted just to go through the process because someone is already going to be offered the job, such as an internal promotion to a more senior position? No, you really can't know. The only way that you're going to find out is whether you apply or you have a contact at that organization. That being said, I have seen it where a hiring manager made a case for their person and they got overridden because of the fact there were far better people out on market. So don't lose that opportunity. Has anybody ever get hired from applying on LinkedIn? I feel like the easy apply is too easy. Haley, you are correct. It is too easy. If you do the easy apply, you're not going to get all the essential information you need there from your profile. It's going to be just skimmed out of there. If we're trying to make a transition to another industry, it's kind of complex for this. What if I'm a generalist and my skills and experience match many jobs? What do I do about diminishing my background? The best advice I can give you is target your resume. You've got to streamline it and you've got to make sure that it's targeted to what you're doing. Each job requires different skills and experiences, and you really need to target that. And Jeff, I think we're out of time at this point.
Yeah, we've hit the hour. And again, it's not to say that you all didn't ask really great questions. Again, I want to refer you to Scott's previous webinars that are recorded and are in our library. If you just go to our alumni website, bu.edu/alumni, and go to the careers section, you should be pretty easily able to find those. I encourage you to check out what Scott has written on his own website and shared on our LinkedIn group. Scott, do you want to go to the next slide and share your website with folks? You've got Scott's email there.
And by the way, everybody that's got their questions here, let's leave it open and I'll answer each individual one by text.
That sounds great. Awesome. Thanks, Scott, for doing that.
So if you're on the call, don't drop off. Otherwise, you're not going to get my answer. All right. So there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. Basically, I do offer resume writing, LinkedIn profiles, and career coaching. And anybody that does come to me and does engage for services, from this webinar, I will make a $25 donation to BU for each one of those. So thank you.
That's awesome, Scott. And I can't thank you enough. I know I said this to you offline. I really do appreciate how willing you've been to share your expertise with the community. You've done us a tremendous service over the years. So on behalf of all of our alumni around the world, thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you. And like I said, I'm going to answer these by text.
Okay, we'll leave it open. I want to thank those of you who attended from around the world. Thanks for all your great questions. I want to thank those of you who have donated to BU in the past. That's super important. We've got 2 great webinars coming up in June. One's going to be on how being 50 years of age or older doesn't mean the end of your career. And we've got another one called The Thrills and Chills of Being Self-Employed. Scott could probably do an hour-long talk about that as well. I encourage you, again, to visit our website, check out our library and all the other events that we've got coming up for alumni all over the globe. If you are any BU alum would be interested in offering a webinar like this for the BU alumni community, please feel free to reach out to me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be. At this point, our webinar is concluded, but we are going to go ahead and leave this open so Scott can start replying to some of those unanswered questions. Thanks, everybody.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.